Hi everybody, this is Kay Gray. Today I'm at Sumeg Village, which is a Native American Yurok tribe village in North California. It is still used for ritual, but it is not regularly inhabited. It resembles the way that Yurok villages used to be before colonization. I brought you here today because it's time to talk about what we're going to do once humanity falls, because that is an inevitable reality that we are facing. We are at the absolute utmost edge of what the earth is willing to tolerate from us, and we are seeing the beginning of our decline. There's going to have to be some sort of guide for future generations to rebuild, and I'm hoping that this will provide some of that information. Farming was the original industrial revolution, and so for the last 6,000 years we have learned a lot about ourselves, but we've also discovered things that we weren't ready for, tools and knowledge that we weren't ready for. Our evolution still has to catch up to the things that we know. So there are things that we need to save from this experience of the last 6,000 years, but at the moment, the only survivors are going to be the ones that remember how to use ancestral skills for survival. It's taken a long time, but science is starting to catch up to the things that we've already known, that holistic living and living close to the earth is literally built for us to be able to survive. So our brains and our bodies have evolved to live with the land, not separate from it. So if you find yourself extremely depressed and anxious and disconnected, it's because you are. You're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. So you can change that in your daily life by doing things that reward your body and your brain naturally. Instead of reading a Kindle, read a book. Simply having that object in your hands and flipping pages gives your body and your mind rewards that you don't realize. They're subconscious, but they help you imagine this story better, they help you connect with it better, they help you remember it better, and we've already proved this through neuroscience. The biggest one for me is foraging. We are absolutely built to find food on a regular basis, and the fact that we don't have to do that leaves us depressed. It is the thing that we are supposed to be spending most of our time doing, and the fact that we're not doing it is the cause for so much disease that we experience. Instead of taking your camera with you on your trip, take mental photographs. Like, really stop and look at the scenery and try to recall that scenery later. You can draw it or write about it, and that experience will help you naturally remember what happened, whereas taking a picture takes you out of the moment, and you then rely on that photograph for your memory. There's so many things like this. Picking your own flower bouquet, telling your family stories orally through a tradition, basket weaving, carving tools, tanning hides, even digging in the soil with your bare hands causes you to have more happy chemicals because there's bacteria in the soil that supports that. We have natural rewards for every single one of these things, and it is the only way that we are going to survive as a species, is to revive living that way. So these are my tenets for reviving human tribal living. Your tribe must not be more than 250 people. It's what is possible for our brains. Perhaps in time, when our brains grow again, we can expand, but a family, a group, cannot exceed 250 people, and they should be dispersed within at least 100 acres all to themselves. The way of life should be hunting, gathering, limited gardening, and very limited barnyard animals. Water is sacred, therefore toilets must always be compost. Continuing scientific study is essential, but it cannot be done in a lab. It has to be done in natural surroundings. One of the most important is no ownership or money. These things poison our minds, and they poison the entire planet. We can't handle what these things are. As a species, we are not capable of handling those things. Trades with other tribes are possible, but should be only used as a last resort when all other options have been exhausted. Children should always be integrated into every aspect of life, not sent away on a daily basis to be separated and caged. They are meant to help us with everything that we do. That is how they learn. And they learn by playing. Most of their childhood should be playing, not work. Everyone must be seen as valuable, no matter who you are and how you work. People's sleep-wake schedules should be of their own making, and if they are having trouble figuring out how to manage it, they can ask for help from specialists and tribe leaders. But if somebody needs to sleep later, then they just need to sleep later. All buildings need to be biodegradable, so that if a tribe dies out or leaves, that everything that they've built will disintegrate into the soil within 50 years. Nomadic lifestyles are essential and respected. There are no borders, so we must be able to move according to the seasons, according to changing shapes of the planet. It's our universal right to be able to move around. Specialists can practice their crafts, but not to the point of ego. If ego arises, that person must stop work and go and reflect until that ego subsides. At the core of every society, there must lie trust. We cannot build any kind of functional world on distrust. Distrust creates fear, and what we have now, our entire planet is plagued by fear. Everything that is happening now and has happened for centuries and millennia is due to fear. We can't do that anymore. We have to go from a place of trust, that if somebody tells you something, you just trust them. You take them at face value, and eventually their natural self will, if they are lying, which when you trust somebody, they're much less likely to lie to you. But if they are, that their natural programming will lead them to the truth eventually. There must be compassion for all situations, all walks of life. Everybody has a reason for what they do, and that must be understood. Grief rituals are essential. It's something that we haven't done as a society. Again, that fear of being human, being whole. But we have to rip the shirts off our backs and pull out our hair and beat the ground and scream into the night when somebody dies or when we lose something that is really important to us. This is processing stress. This is literally processing stress, and it's essential to health. Sun and moon driven rituals are very important. Festivals, with the understanding that this is essential to human happiness. It's how we evolved, so it's not necessarily to be taken too seriously. It's more in the honor of how our brains have evolved. Absolutely no sacrifices. There is, yes, perhaps we have done this ritualistically, but it got out of hand. We are not going to kill each other or animals for the purpose of appeasing some sort of spirit. If there is spirit, it does not need us to kill things for it. That said, when we kill an animal, we use all of the parts and we give thanks to its life. Continuing to do inner work is expected of everyone, no matter what shape it takes. It is just simply a base expectation of everyone. And if someone is appearing to not be doing that inner work, then they are invited into, they're helped. People notice. We watch each other. We help each other. Life should be slow and rhythmic. There is absolutely no need for daily stress when we are working together towards a common goal. Stress is reserved strictly for emergencies. That's exactly what it exists for, and when we overuse it, then it's not there when we actually need it. Anger is just unprocessed trauma. When someone exhibits it, that means it's time to stop whatever it is they're doing and go and separate themselves to do that inner work. And they can absolutely be aided by a specialist in that work. Rest is key. Unless there's a dire emergency, if you need to rest, you rest. Menstruating people should take the time to separate themselves and rest away from the group, to rejuvenate themselves and to connect with each other on those planes of being a menstruating person. Continuing to tell stories is everyone's right and responsibility. It doesn't belong to any specific few. It is not something to be revered. It is simply a responsibility of every person. Of course, there will be those that are better at it. And so that's just their job. That's what they do. But it doesn't mean that we have to elevate them to the level of a god or a spirit. Spiritual medicine, earthly spiritual medicine, is absolutely available, but only on a limited basis. And addiction should always be addressed immediately. No alcohol. There should be a female majority council of leaders. Sorry, males, you have had an opportunity, but you have really botched this one. So it's time to step back and do inner work for a few thousand years. Until then, female-bodied people really need to step up and be in charge. And of course, no cars, no concrete. We must remain as close to the earth at all times as possible. We can retain some transportation devices. Again, it has to be on a limited basis, and if it leads to greed or any kind of danger or an exaggeration of any sort, then we really can't do it. That's something that is to be experimented. The limitation of barnyard animals is important because they are not meant to be that way. We cannot control nature. By controlling nature is how we got into this mess in the first place, which is why hunting and gathering is really the only way that we can continue. That said, a few chickens for a few eggs for emergencies, that can be all right, but anything that becomes more than 5 to 10% of the diet is too much. There is somebody out there with land where I can build this ideal society. And it's not in order to prove that I know how to, it's not an ego thing. It is literally to carry out experiments with these ideas that I have and to leave behind a roadmap for people once everything comes crashing down, because it inevitably will. I will never be able to afford the kind of land that I need in this environment. Of course, it should be free. It should always be free, that if you want to live somewhere, that you can live there. But given that everybody has land grabbed and has said, I own this, I own that, I don't care where it is on the planet, so long as there is access to water and it's not completely devoid of life. Of course, for me, colder climates are better. But if you're out there and you have a piece of land that came from genocide and colonization, and you aren't using it, but you deep down inside that you want to do something important with it, contact me. I would love to steward your land and make sure that there is some place on earth that is still sacred. Thanks for listening today. I hope you'll join me somewhere in the future.